Sheriff Patrick Morgan was both protector and legend. For over 20 years, he had served the community with a firm but fair hand. But behind the badge and the handshakes, Pat harbored a secret that would ultimately lead him down a dark and twisted path. Pat was in love with Elijah Eli Carter, a man 10 years his junior with a wild streak and a troubled past. Eli was a drifter who had returned to Cedar Hollow after spending time in prison for theft. Their connection had been immediate and electric, born of shared moments stolen in secret. For Pat, a man married to his high school sweetheart, Susan, and a father to 2 grown daughters, the relationship was an escape from the pressures of his life, a hidden world where he felt truly free. But secrets, as they often do, began to weigh heavy. Eli, impulsive and reckless, wanted more. He pushed Pat to leave Susan and make their relationship public, but Pat refused. Cedar Hollow was a conservative town, and the scandal would destroy not only his career but also his family. Their heated arguments grew more frequent, and Eli started to become unpredictable. One fateful night, Eli called Pat in a panic. He'd gotten into a bar fight with a local troublemaker, Cody Vance, and in the scuffle, Cody had hit his head on the curb and died. Eli begged Pat to help him, swearing it was an accident. Torn between love and duty, Pat reluctantly agreed. Together, they moved Cody's body into Eli's truck and drove out to an abandoned quarry on the outskirts of town, a deep and murky abyss that locals claimed was bottomless. After tying cinder blocks to Cody's body, they pushed it into the water. Pat stared at the rippling surface, his chest heavy with dread. "This has to be the end of it, Eli," he said. But Eli's expression was unreadable. For a few weeks, life returned to a fragile semblance of normal. Cody was reported missing, but most assumed he had skipped town to avoid trouble. However, the tension between Pat and Eli reached a breaking point. Eli, emboldened by Pat's complicity, began making veiled threats, hinting he might reveal their affair if Pat didn't commit to him. Desperate and cornered, Pat made a decision he thought would end the nightmare. Pat invited Eli to his hunting cabin deep in the woods, a place he claimed would be a safe retreat where they could talk things through. Eli, suspecting nothing, agreed. The cabin was secluded, surrounded by acres of dense forest. As they shared a drink, Pat's hands trembled. He had brought his service revolver, tucked beneath his jacket. The confrontation escalated quickly. Eli accused Pat of using him and called him a coward. Fueled by fear and anger, Pat pulled the gun. Eli laughed bitterly, daring him to do it. In a moment of blind panic, Pat pulled the trigger. Eli fell, the life draining from his eyes as he whispered, "You'll never be free of me." Pat sat in stunned silence, the enormity of his actions sinking in. But his instincts as a sheriff took over, and he began plotting how to dispose of Eli's body. The quarry was out of the question. Too obvious. Instead, Pat remembered an old coal mine on the outskirts of town, long abandoned and forgotten by most. It was the perfect hiding spot. Using a tarp and rope, Pat loaded Eli's body into the trunk of his car. He drove under the cover of night to the mine, where he carefully lowered the body into a collapsed shaft. To ensure it would never be found, he sealed the entrance with rocks and debris, creating what looked like a natural cave-in. The days that followed were a blur of paranoia. Pat returned to his duties, but every knock on his door and every passing glance felt like an accusation. Meanwhile, Eli's absence didn't go unnoticed. His sister Lena Carter began asking questions, refusing to believe that her brother would simply disappear without a word. She filed a missing person report, and the case fell to none other than Sheriff Pat Morgan. Pat threw himself into the investigation, using his authority to control the narrative. He planted evidence suggesting Eli had left town voluntarily, including fake bus tickets and a fabricated witness statement from a trucker claiming to have given Eli a ride. But Lena was relentless. She contacted a private investigator, Marcus Kane, who had a reputation for solving cold cases. Marcus arrived in Cedar Hollow and immediately began poking holes in Pat's carefully constructed story. He uncovered inconsistencies in the timeline and noted Pat's unusual behavior during the investigation. The tension between the two men was palpable, with Marcus openly questioning Pat's motives. As the pressure mounted, Pat's mental state began to unravel. He grew paranoid, convinced that Marcus would uncover the truth. His relationship with Susan deteriorated as he became distant and irritable. The town, once his sanctuary, now felt like a prison. The breaking point came when Lena and Marcus organized a search of the quarry. While they didn't find Cody's body, they uncovered a piece of fabric caught on a rock that matched the shirt Cody was last seen wearing. The discovery reignited interest in Cody's case and cast doubt on Pat's ability to solve it. Desperate to maintain control, Pat made a fatal mistake. He attempted to frame Marcus by planting drugs in his motel room and tipping off the local police. But Marcus anticipated the move and turned the tables, exposing Pat's actions to the media. The scandal rocked Cedar Hollow, and Pat was suspended pending an investigation. With his world crumbling, Pat made one final, desperate move. He drove to the mine under the cover of darkness, intending to relocate Eli's remains. But Lena and Marcus had been following him, suspecting he was hiding something. They watched as Pat struggled to unseal the mine's entrance, catching him in the act. Confronted by Lane and Marcus, Pat broke down and confessed to everything. The weight of his crimes, Cody's cover-up, Eli's murder, and the betrayal of his oath came crashing down on him. He was arrested and charged with multiple felonies, including murder and obstruction of justice. The trial was a media circus, drawing national attention to the small town of Cedar Hollow. Witnesses testified about Pat's integrity and fall from grace, while Lena delivered a searing victim impact statement that left the courtroom in tears. Marcus provided key evidence that dismantled Pat's defense, ensuring a conviction. Pat was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Cedar Hollow, once proud of its sheriff, was left grappling with the betrayal. Susan divorced Pat and moved away, seeking a fresh start. Lena founded a support group for families of missing persons, dedicating her life to helping others find closure. The mine was sealed permanently, a somber reminder of the dark secrets it had hidden. Cedar Hollow began to heal, but the scars of Pat's actions lingered, a cautionary tale of love, betrayal, and the devastating consequences of secrets. It's almost too wild to believe. Pat's choices not only destroyed his life, but also shattered the lives of everyone around him. It really makes you wonder, how far would someone go to protect their image or a forbidden love? Let me know what you think about this one in the comments. Maybe do you think justice was served? And as always, thanks for sticking with me through this wild ride. I'll catch you in the next one. The names, the details, and the sentences of this case are not real. These made-up scenarios allow us to explore suspenseful situations without exploiting real-life tragedies. Our goal is to create thought-provoking mysteries while respecting the privacy and dignity of real people. Thank you for watching, and let us know your thoughts below.